hear me. I just recently wrote this story, and I'm actually going to share this with my Writers Club on the 31st when we have our next meeting. This is called The Trickster and the Academic. Chapter 1, Campus Life. Cody Knopf was your typical prankster. He was always ending up in some sort of trouble. He lived to prank, and being sent to Marion University simply meant he could broaden his horizons and experiment more in his art. Cody was enchanted immediately upon entering the campus's vast green fields, walkways, and gazing upon its ancient, although recently refurbished, buildings. His green eyes caught sight of the dormitories where he would be spending the next 4 years of his life. Far too eager and avid to meet his roommate, he rushed with information in his hands to the dorms, busted into the men's dormitory, and asked for his key from the apathetic emo tenant Billy. Walking in an orderly fashion to room 107, he opened the door to find his roommate. The student was dressed differently from him. He was rail thin, wore hipster glasses, had ebony brilliantine glossed hair, and a preppy outfit that looked at it as if it jumped out of an Abercrombie store. He was reading Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Ugh, tragedy. I'm more of a comedy dude myself, Cody commented. The highbrow shut his ridiculously grand tome, walked up to him, and huffed. I don't know who you are, kid, but you do not disrespect the name of the hallowed bard in this holy space. Do I make myself clear? Marshall said, being intensely serious, so much that his dark eyes might as well have been laser beams burning Cody's baseball cap to cinders. Justin, a ginger-haired, freckled menace, had a daringly devious idea. Somehow he would make him like him, even if it was the last thing he ever did. Stick in the mud or not, this fancy-pants rich brat was going to learn how to savor life and enjoy it, or his name wasn't Corey Lee Beauregard Knopf. Chapter 2, Madcap Hijinks. Marshall wondered what he had done to rankle the ire of the gods or whoever was in charge of his life. He hated Cody every nanosecond, and there were days that he would abscond to the library, hoping Cody would never seek him out. Somehow, as if Cody were psychic, he'd locate him and they'd battle about different authors, past and present, in the realm of theater. Inevitably, Cody would start trolling Marshall to the point where he'd surrender and nearly scream, "Enough! What do you want from me? What will it take to get you to leave me alone?" "Easy, Al. Just be my friend," Cody answered honestly. Tragically, Cody didn't have many friends growing up. He was misunderstood, left out, unincluded from baseball games, which he loved. Marshall had been the first potential pal that he had run when he made a joke or done an impression. Most surprisingly, he didn't flee when he had been pranked. In fact, one time, Cody was certain that he caught a glimpse of Marshall actually cracking a hint of a smile, of all things. If I do, you have to promise to stop making me the butt of all your jokes," Marshall said sternly. Cody wasn't upset with the stipulations and agreed to them quickly. Besides that, sacrificing one aspect of his pleasure didn't mean the end of the world. The next morning, Cody woke up renewed and refreshed. "Hey, Al," he said gleefully before going out to breakfast. "Meh," Marshall said, pulling the covers over his scruffy head and going back to sleep. It was a weekend he typically slept in, but not today. "Come on, we're going to get you into some real fundamental reading," Cody exclaimed as he yanked his roommate out of bed and out of the room. After eating breakfast and getting ready for the day, Cody drove Marshall to his favorite comic book store, Ink Alley. The owner, Dave Fitzgerald, knew him and knew his graphic novels. He had his graphic novels selected even before he sauntered in. They were like brothers, though, and they enjoyed shooting the trivial things. Marshall found himself intrigued by titles like Kabuki, She, Suspira, Lady Death, Evil Ernie, and especially the Babes of Marvel. He had plenty of credit to purchase his reading materials, but then asked to be subscribed to them as well. Cody's mouth nearly dropped to the floor in utter disbelief. These comics you told me of aren't so terrible. The artwork really brings to mind my sister's work. She's with DreamWorks now," he said wistfully. "Your sis Sarah is one lucky dog, but I am aware animation is painstaking, backbreaking work," Dave commented. Cody was still dumbstruck, but he had only yet begun. There was still more frivolity to be had. Chapter 3. Further Hijinks. Galaxyland wasn't far from the comic book store they had just frequented. "Roller coasters? But I'm deathly afraid of heights," Marshall shuddered. "Oh, come on, Al, don't be such a baby," Cody explained, leading them to the biggest, baddest, curviest, most twisted loop-de-loop coaster of all time. Black Hole. It boasted speeds that should have been illegal for a coaster to achieve. Not only had Black Hole broken records, thrill seekers and adrenaline junkies alike heralded it as the most wicked coaster of all mankind. A golden honor. Teeth clacking and knees knocking, Marshall entered the cart and cringed as the metal safety bar secured him across his lap and chest. There was an extra safety belt he had to strap on, but it didn't lend him any comfort. "This is so flippin' amazing! This is the first time I've ever ridden Black Hole. Usually I just go it alone on coasters, but I've gone on most of them. It's such a rush," Cody boasted. "Maybe you should find a better way of spending your time, Cody. Books are so much quieter," Marshall said, his voice faltering as the cart ascended the lofty first metal hill of the coaster. Marshall could sense his stomach drop like a stone in water when the carts ascended the hill. Round and round loops they spun, enough to make him sick. Yet he didn't vomit. All he could do was scream with unbridled glee. His one phobia, heights, he had overcome in one fell swoop. Once the ride was over, Cody purchased souvenir photos for posterity. He laughed heartily at Marshall's terrified expression versus his delighted one. The rest of the day was spent playing laser tag and riding classic amusement park rides until they were both tuckered out. The duo ate the best pizza they had ever consumed and finished off with Galaxyland's signature and decadent Milky Way sundae. Chapter 4. Preparing for Finals. Cody at times had some difficulty showing restraint and much rather wanted to seize the moment rather than backing down and being serious. He was doing an average job in his classes, but Marshall wanted to help him succeed. After all, it was Cody who taught him he didn't have to be stoic or absorbed with his studies. Yet now, since finals were upon them, was not one of those times. "Come on, Cody, you have to go through your algebra problems one more time. It's really easy. You're making it more difficult," Marshall sighed, head in his hand. He savored the company of his unlikely friend, but now was just feeling irritated. Slowly he inhaled and exhaled, giving himself an inner peace he desired. "But One Piece is on. I usually get to see how the episode ends," Cody whined. "You have Netflix," Marshall offered rationally. "They don't have the newer episodes that Toonami airs. Do you know nothing? Sometimes you can be such a baka," Cody harumphed. "You have it DVR'd, imbecile," Marshall chided. Both of them knew arguing like two-year-olds wouldn't accomplish anything. "Come on, it's just for a couple nights. You can make it. We've been through worse together this year," Marshall reminisced. Cody recalled when Marshall had experienced a bad fall, returning from the library and twisted his leg, spraining it. Cody was no medical student, but luckily he had been reading up on his first aid and sought to Marshall's injury. It took half a week, but Marshall healed completely. And the two were more brothers than friends since then. The arguing ceased, and with much sighing, Cody cracked open his gargantuan algebra book. It took all night, but Marshall was assured his friend would do well in his arithmetic final tomorrow. Chapter 5. Let Nothing Distract You. The next day, Cody was pumped to be taking his final exam. This also meant that he would be returning to his family for summer vacation before fall semester started once more. He didn't realize it would be so bittersweet, but he had already made arrangements so that Marshall could visit and stay in the Knopf's guest room. Once in his class, people are divided into two distinct groups, those who were prepared for the final and those who hadn't. One of those students in his algebra class, Serena, was feeling particularly confident. Cody had a crush on her since the beginning of the year and found it particularly hard to concentrate. He'd get distracted by her chocolate eyes, flawless tan complexion, or plush, plump lips. He snapped himself to attention and brought himself back to reality. Besides, he'd find other opportunities to impress the spicy Latina later. Cody didn't know how Marshall kept his resolve so cool. He had a girlfriend, Cadence, who is most likely the prettiest and most popular gal on campus, but not for typical reasons. Cody wouldn't admit he was jealous of their long-standing relationship, but he and Serena were sewn at the hip like Marshall and Cadence were. Time seemed to drag on mundanely until he finished. Double-checking his answer, he returned his paper to Professor Dr. Tariq. Before leaving class entirely, he left a clever note to Serena. "You must be a thief because you've stolen my heart. Let's hang out sometime. Give me a call on my cell, sweets." And the aforementioned mobile number was listed with Cody's name and proverbial X's and O's for good measure. He could only wait and hope for either result. Prayerfully, he mused, they would both favor his fortune. Chapter 6. As time goes by. The weekend came without interruption, and Cody soon forgot about his results until he checked his mail. Tentatively, he opened it and then started dancing through the dorm singing "What a Feeling" at the top of his lungs. In the background, he could hear an uncharacteristically laid-back Marshall replied sing-songingly, "Told you so." The best of both friends had finally rubbed off on each other. Before leaving that afternoon, he bade Marshall farewell, and had his first date with Serena. It was a peaceful picnic, which Marshall suggested. She was definitely impressed with his freestyle rhymes. She even asked for more dates in the future, which he attributed to Marshall's understanding to the female nature. As summers passed and autumns came, the friends grew closer and closer together, becoming an extended family. They were graduating and heading out into the real world, getting married and maybe having a family someday. To celebrate this new trek in life, they frequented the arcade they spent many a quarter in after doing their finals. They would be seeing lots of old Leonard's Trove, or just the Trove as they had appellated it. Some golden day, though, their children would hear of its fabled high scorers, its skee-ball champs, and DDR dancing freaks. Only now those children were mere twinkles in their father's eyes, and words spoken on their faithful and ambitious lips. Epilogue. In about 4 years' time, Cody and Marshall had landed gigs in TV shows that they had produced and written themselves. The two co-producers were receiving tons of accolades and positive critiques. They were both new dads, too, and had their hands more than adequately full. However, as brothers, they honored the ironclad law of bro-spect. Always help your brother when he needs a hand. The duo knew that they could count on one another if it hadn't been for teamwork or friendship, they would have never defied their odds alone. And I got a picture. I don't know if you can see. Cody and Marshall. Yay!